Keir Starmer was ready for a hard hat moment in which he'd be photographed and videoed wearing his hard hat, announcing a new stream of housing paving over Britain in order to, build houses for those migrants coming over. But he says, look, I'm here, you meet us here, press, and get your pictures, get your videos, get your interviews. And Britain's farmers said no. They brought it to a standstill. He couldn't get there and he had to evacuate, very embarrassingly, by helicopter. Check this out. So didn't go too well for him, did it? But a farmer was asked about how this would escalate. Will we end up like France and all the rest of it, where you had the gilets jaunes making their presence known when taxes were imposed upon drivers and all the rest of it, when actually farmers stand to lose their family businesses? And here's what a farmer said on GB News earlier today.
Farmers are united in one voice, that the family farm tax and that Labour in general are destroying the countryside. And it's so important that as all these groups come together, that we focus our energy against Labour, against Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, and that we leave the public, don't disrupt the public, and don't block the food supply chain. And that is the key message from everyone, that this is within Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves' power to reverse. We've got the spring statement next month, and we so hope that they're going to announce either a softening or a U-turn, because otherwise things like this will carry on happening. The farmers who were there today are the same farmers who were there in London, and wherever Keir Starmer goes, the farmers will be following.
Yeah, I mean, James, it does seem as though the tactic from the government is to sort of ignore the issue. Just sort of hope that it blows over.
Yeah. But I just had my neighbour come round for a cup of coffee this morning. He was born in the farmhouse. His father was born in that farmhouse before him. He does not care that farm is worth a lot of money. He will never, ever sell it. He never wants to sell it. It's the family crown jewels passed down between generation to generation. He earns less than minimum wage. He lives an incredibly simple life. But because Labour and Keir Starmer do not understand that farming is not profitable, that these are not businesses, these are family dynasties, that they cannot afford to pay the family farm tax. It's not that farmers don't want to pay tax, they pay income tax, they pay VAT, all sorts. It's that the inheritance tax does not stack up. Food production is not profitable enough. And governments since for the last 30 years have known that. It's just this government have come in and decided to change it. And this
because it's ideological, my friends. And good for James there for standing his guard. But I would argue that actually this is purely ideological and that they're doing it deliberately. I mean, he says they're not all millionaires. This is the narrative that you hear from the horrible identity politics obsessed and class warfare left, that actually farmers are just a bunch of rich people with a load of land. Well, actually, no, this land and making food, it's incredibly competitive. It's difficult. And we should reward those who choose to do it, because it's a real sacrifice, getting up at the crack of dawn every morning and working as hard as they do. It's a really hard slog. And then going out to protest the Prime Minister. That shows their effort, my friends. It really, really does. But someone put this question to me. He said, this is from George, he said, would you react the same if it was just oil? I assume just oil means just stop oil. And the answer to that is, George, I actually think that is a disingenuous comparison. Just stop oil. Who do they have, right? Who do they have? Think about this. They have the whole apparatus of the international elites. They have governments, they have world leaders across the piece, they've got the World Economic Forum, everyone in Davos, they've got the United Nations, they've got absolutely everybody on their side. And net zero is in law in the EU and in the United Kingdom, making us colder and poorer. We are totally on bended knee as a country economically to the climate cultists. Compare that to the farmers. The farmers try to get meetings with the Prime Minister. As Emily said in that clip, they want to ignore the issue and hope that these chippy little farmers go away because the Labour Party know they're not going to hold on to the rural vote. They're not going to win these once Tory areas that they won over in the last election. And they say, to hell with you. And that is the cruel and calculated decision that has been made on behalf of His Majesty's government. So I'm afraid that the comparison is a moot point, because there is no comparison. Farmers are not listened to at all. They do not have policies that represent them. They do not have groups that are currently representing them. The climate cultists have absolutely bloody everybody. What more do they want? The farmers are not being unreasonable in saying that they just want to be listened to and have their concerns heard, and for the Labour to understand what they're going to do to farming in Britain. And I'm afraid the answer is they just don't care. But that desire to be heard, in my opinion, is entirely democratic, and stopping the Prime Minister from being heard by the press pack as he wears a hard hat and makes out that he's the next, I don't know, goodness only knows what, Bob the Builder, well, I think that's perfectly democratic and fair. They're not gluing their arses to the road. They're not destroying priceless works of art. They're not preventing ambulances from getting from A to B. There is no comparison between these farmers and Just Stop Oil. That is a weak argument.